One front runner for Vice President of the United States, former governor of North Dakota, and former presidential candidate Doug Burgum, live right here on The Will Cain Show. 2, second take, revisiting some of my positions this week on whether or not Joe Biden is mentally incompetent, or is it in fact, as laid out to us by MSNBC, Donald Trump who's losing his marbles? Plus, was an Amazon tribe really addicted to porn? And should we really celebrate the conviction of Hunter Biden? Second take. 3, how dare you foul out Luka Doncic in the NBA Finals? How dare you, NBA? Am I a homer? It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, always on demand by subscribing on Apple or Spotify. If you ever miss a live version of the Will Cain Show, then you can listen to it on your commute, on the treadmill. If you're listening to us on terrestrial radio across this great U.S. of A., download our podcast on Spotify or on Apple. But if you enjoy watching us here on the Will Cain Show, the visual elements, then you just need to hit subscribe on YouTube. There's a little link underneath the live description of this live stream, and you can hang out with us, jump into the comments, and be a part of the community, the Willisha here on the Will Cain Show. And there are days where the visual element is a bit important. Today could be one of those days. So we've got a big show. We've got an interview with the odds-on favorite, the betting favorite, as the vice presidential pick for candidate Donald Trump. We got a live interview with Doug Burgum, and it's a big day here on the Will Cain Show. And that is visually represented two-a-days. Tinfoil Pat, Young Establishment James. I mean, Establishment James, two-a-days. He's dressed for the occasion. He's wearing a blue blazer into the office today. There he is. Look at him, dressed up for the governor.
He was all dressed up, and I was wondering why, but then it made sense when the governor was coming in. He'd put his nice coat on, his nice jacket on, all these dressed up folks here. So he's just trying to, look good for the governor here, and then it makes sense.
Want to make him feel welcome on the show.
It's a blue blazer convention there in the Will Cain Show green room, and James made sure that he fit in. Young Establishment James got up this morning and said, it's a blue blazer day.
Yeah.
And
do that more often.
As we've learned, he's got Governor Burgum's picture in his profile of his burner account on Twitter, which we exposed. We exposed a little bit earlier this week on the Will Cain Show.
Don't want to get him in any trouble there.
Well, I don't know why you would. West Village guy, big Doug Burgum fan. So
True.
His alter ego, Young Establishment James, put on the blue blazer to get a picture with maybe our future vice president. So go get the governor set up in the interview room. Young Establishment James, see if you can get your picture taken. Maybe one day you will have a new profile picture. It will be a profile picture with the future vice president of the United States. So let's just find out. Let's do that. Let's start it with story number 1. He is the former governor of North Dakota, former presidential candidate, and according to the betting odds, he is the favorite as the vice presidential candidate for presidential candidate Donald Trump. He's Doug Burgum here on the Will Cain Show. Governor, great to have you.
Hey, Will, great to be with you. Fun to be here with your team, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you got some fans. Governor. And I don't know how much you watch Fox News, but I don't cast my lot. I don't say I'm a supporter, or I try not to cheerlead. I just try to analyze and give the authentic opinion of where I am. And I've noticed from the presidential debates onward, you've got something. You had a message that I thought was important, and I don't know if it was a populist resonating message that wasn't important to me in what I was saying, but you seem to be a little bit different on that presidential stage. And now here you are, the betting odds say, front runner for vice president.
Well, I'm as far as the betting odds, I laugh at that because a couple months ago you couldn't do a 10,000 to 1 bet on me, and then somebody told me last week you were leading. So I mean, it's like you've been in sports, Will. You've covered that. You know how sometimes a sure thing looks like a long odds and vice versa. But we're out here really just focusing on campaigning for President Trump because I'm still the sitting governor of North Dakota. And I can tell you, as a governor of North Dakota, the biggest challenge that we have for the future of our state right now, for our economy, for our people, for our three major industries, it's the Biden regulatory regime. I mean, people talk about, hey, they're worried about the future of democracy. Well, I'm living in a threat to democracy right now because none of the over 30 rules and mandates that we're pushing back on the federal government have come through Congress. They're not laws that have been passed. These are agencies, three-digit agencies, dozens of them that are, pushing an ideology down on our state that's, raising the prices for everybody. It's destabilizing the world. It's undermining our national security. And it's these are and again, for people that are concerned about where our economy's going, whether it's AI, crypto, any of those things, we've got to have energy policy that allows our nation to continue to thrive, and we're competing against countries that have on a very different trajectory in terms of their energy production, and so that's going to help determine where the world goes,
right.
And we got to wake up and be part of that future.
And that was part of, like I said, I think that you had a unique, to me, a message that resonated in some of the issues you were talking about on the presidential debate stage. And I want to get into some of those today. We'll talk about China, and I want to talk about energy in particular. But I do want to get to know you a little bit. I have plenty of opportunities on Fox and Friends to get your 3, 4, 5, 6-minute opinion on a specific policy. But I also want to get to know you as a man, as the leader. So let me just start light, because you brought it up, sports. Are you a sports guy? You're in North Dakota. Are you an outdoorsman? Like, what is Doug Burgum beyond a governor and starting tech companies and sweeping chimneys? Like, what do you do? What's your hobby?
Well, growing up in the small town of Arthur, we had 3 sports in high school, and that was football, basketball, and track. And man, I spent every minute I could. I was, hanging around. We only had one gym. That was the high school gym. But had a hoop in the backyard and spent a lot of time growing up, and just played basketball all the way up until last August. I think people famously know.
Right, what'd you blow out?
I blew my Achilles.
You blew out your knee, your Achilles?
I blew my Achilles, ruptured my Achilles completely playing some pickup ball at Marquette within 24 hours of the debate. So you mentioned the debates, but yeah, I don't know if your audience may not have heard, but I was voted, it was the best performance ever in a presidential debate by someone standing on one leg. So that was the that was I'm in the record books, but yeah, I love sports and have continued to stay active in that, and then also an outdoorsman. I mean, I grew up in a place where you could literally sort of walk out your door, and living on the farm where we raised our kids. I mean, you could walk out the door and hunt pheasants, bow hunt, cross-country ski in the wintertime. I mean, it is the outdoors and all of that is something that I've always loved, and one of the reasons I've loved living in North Dakota, because it's always just one door away from being in beautiful outdoors.
I have a buddy. I'm in my 40s. I have a buddy who played pickup basketball, and he had to stop. Not unlike you, because one day he goes out there with a bunch of guys and he thinks he's hustling just like he did when he was 25, and he planted. I think he was in possession of the ball, but he just planted, and he knew immediately something was wrong. And he said it was weird. It's not pain. It's almost like an audible pop that you could hear, and then just like a weird destabilization that it was his Achilles. He blew out his Achilles. Is that what it was like? Did it hurt? Like when you blew the Achilles, did you know this is real bad?
Well, the specifics of this, having played organized league ball and playing in North Dakota, there's a great amateur basketball hierarchy, and so having played on teams that we won the A, which is sort of any age. We've won the over 30. Played on a team. Even when I was governor, we won the over 50. Those are all fun. But you play ball your whole life. I was on the court 3 different times when someone blew their Achilles. And yes, there's an audible pop. They go down. They're in a lot of pain. And then they'd be like, "Who kicked me?" And then you'd be like, "Well, there's nobody behind you. Nobody
Right.
kicked you." And so when I went down and people said, "What happened?" And I said, "Somebody kicked me." And then I heard myself say, "Someone kicked me." And they said, "Oh, did you twist your ankle?" And I said, "No, I blew my Achilles." They're like, "No, you didn't. Walk it off." And I'm like, "No, you heard what I just said. I'm pretty sure I don't even need to see a doctor. That's what happened." And of course, that's what did happen. Right. And it's a tough one. It's a long recovery. I mean, it took Kevin Durant 12 months. Everybody asked me, "Are you playing basketball?" I'm like, "Hey, Kevin Durant was 12 months before he was back. I got 3 more months before I have to hit that timeline and get back on the court."
Well, your story and my story, my life story, have an interesting commonality, an interesting similarity. And I know you talked about this. I think you even talked about it on the debate stage. You lost your dad at a very young age. You were in high school. I think you were a senior in high school. I lost my dad when I was 25. I had a younger brother. I'm the oldest of 4. My youngest brother was 15. He was a sophomore in high school. And I know, Governor, for me, and I know for my brother, both of my brothers and my sister, that's a really formative thing, to lose your father at a young age. So tell me about that. Like, how did that form your life?
Well, my dad was an amazing guy, World War II Navy vet who'd signed up after Pearl Harbor. Growing up in this town of 300, Arthur, North Dakota, we didn't have a pool. There was no swimming hole. There was no river. I don't think even the guy knew how to swim, but he, like a lot of young men in that era, and then he, signed up, proposed to mom. They got married in Chicago, like a six people there. She didn't even have a wedding dress. And then they, put him on a destroyer as an officer, and he, because he had a college degree, they put him on a destroyer. He didn't see mom for 2.5 years, but he lived to tell about it. When I was a 7th grader, he came down with a brain cancer, brain tumor, probably related to some things he got exposed to during the war. And then, he fought hard for 2 years, but then, we thought he was going to make it. But I was tying back to basketball. I was getting on the bus on a Friday night in January and getting ready to go play Kindred, one of our arch rivals, and they pulled me off the bus. And I was like, "Hey, he'll be fine. He's always popped back before." And they're like, "Nope, you got to go." And then he passed away later that night. So that was a tough thing. My mom then went back to work. She was incredible. Stay-at-home mom with working on the school board, the church board, all that stuff. But she had to go get a job to help, put food on the table and pay the mortgage and do all that. So she was. I understand what economic insecurity can look like from a single mom's perspective, and it was incredible to see her. So I learned a lot from both of my parents, and they were I feel it was a real gift where I grew up and to have parents like that.
Governor, when my dad passed, there are so many different places of emptiness left in your life. There's just a void, and one of the most obvious and tangible voids is. I was at a stage in my life where I was needing to make the transition from a boy into a man, but you don't have all the answers. So it's just a habit. Hey, I don't know. And it can be little stuff. I don't know how to fix this thing on my car. I don't know who to call in a certain crisis, but I always knew the first call was to my dad. And like, hey, I need some advice. And all of a sudden I had a void of advice. I didn't know, like, what's my first move when it comes to getting some guidance. And I had to find new places for that. And I'll tell you personally, and I don't know if I've talked about this with the audience, like my friends who I have some very, very, forget smart, I have some wise friends. They really filled that void for me. And I'm just curious where you went, men, and you were younger than me, look for mentors. I don't know if I want to stretch it to say look for heroes. Look for places to model. Where'd you go to model who you wanted to be after you lost your dad?
Well, like you, Will, I had some good friends, but I was unlike you, where you were the older brother, and I'm sure you were looking after your younger siblings. I was the youngest of 3, and had an older brother who was sort of stepped in a little bit into that father role, and he was a great. We were super close, and I really relied on him a lot. And then sadly, he passed away in 2010, so I've lost my older brother, a guy that I really leaned on. But other friends, and then dads of other friends, and you're in a small town like that, I sort of had a chance to pick the role models, the ones that I thought were the ones that were doing it right in terms of how they were doing it. But I know that empty feeling. I mean, raising 3 kids, there's plenty of times when I wished I could have asked Dad, "Hey, how do you do this?" But figured out. But my dad lost his dad when he was 7 years old. So when I lost my dad, I'm like, hey, now I understand my own father better because he was trying to figure things out.
Interesting.
So we were, and neither one of my grandfathers, one of them passed away decades before I was born, and the other one passed away when I was 6 months. So I didn't have any grandfathers in the picture, and so it was figured out. So I ended up again also with a lot of strong female role models, including my mom, who was just she was a rock and she was amazing. And so I feel fortunate. There's a lot of people in my life that helped set me on the right direction. And coaches,
I'm glad you said that.
There were some coaches in high school that were at that time when I lost my dad were very important, and that's probably why, I got to focus on sports, and probably I buried myself into sports as a way to maybe avoid some of the, thinking about some of the other challenges.
I'm glad you said about your mom. It's a good reminder for me. I mean, I know I just probably don't say it out loud enough. The rock that was my mom. And I think it's because I'm just so male focused, and I've always had guy friends, and I've surrounded myself with male role models. But yeah, I mean, the role that these mothers play, it's just beyond incredible. And they say on the friend thing, you're a product of the 5 people you surround yourself with. You surround yourself with a bunch of dummies, you're going to end up being a dummy. You surround yourself with 5 intelligent people smarter than you raise your own game. I think that's true. And I looked at my friends and I'm like, not transactionally. It's not to be transactional in your friendships. You're like, hey, I can see how you add to what I want to be in this way, and look at other people that way. So I kind of want to ask you about some of your relationships. So I've been intrigued by you for quite some time. And whenever I'm intrigued by someone, I also want to say, well, what are the holes in the game, or what are the criticisms? And you were on Fox and Friends last week, and my co-host Rachel Campos Duffy asked you about, one of the sort of emerging criticisms out you. And I don't know if emerging is the right word. One of the present criticisms of you out there from the right. And it seems to be this idea that you are in some way, and we know some of the policies, and we'll get into some of the policies here, but in some way, sort of a globalist mentality. You're a very successful entrepreneur. And I struggle to find, Governor, where this comes from. And I know the policy it does, and we'll discuss the policy in a minute. But I think it also ties to your relationships, because that's what you and I are talking about, relationships here. And it's, you sold your company to Microsoft, you're big buddies with Steve Ballmer, it appears, and you have a good relationship with Bill Gates. And I think that relationship, for me on the right, has created some skepticism. Tell me about your relationship with Bill Gates.
Well, first of all, let me just go back to the globalism thing, which is and how that, again, I smile and laugh when people try to stick that. When you're a kid growing up in a town that didn't even have a computer, and then I end up, literally betting the farm. I mean, the small bit of farm ground I got from my dad that I inherited, that was the seed capital that went into Great Plains Software, where we started with, 10 kids basically, and then we, built this thing up. We went public before we got acquired by Microsoft. I mean, we'd been around for 18 years before we got acquired by Microsoft. And during that time, we built a company of 2,000 people. We had 1,200 in Fargo, 400 rest of North America, and 400 rest of the world. So even before we became part of Microsoft as a new division, all 2,000 of us became a new Microsoft Business Solutions division of Microsoft. I had people working around the world in all these countries, and then in my role at Microsoft, I had people working for me in over 100 countries. So then you have people that are working for you that are, and customers and partners that are living in countries where they don't have the right to free speech. They don't have the right to assemble. They certainly don't have the right to, bear arms. Many of them didn't have the right to vote. So then if you're a kid that's grown up in the center of America, in what I call the best of America, the heartland of America, a place where, today, even still, neighbors are helping neighbors, and we've got, low crime in spite of the Biden administration, the economy's doing well in North Dakota. Among the fastest growing GDP, highest workforce participation, lowest unemployment. I mean, there's a lot of positive things. It'd be better if we weren't being choked by Biden. But when you grow up surrounded by that, that's the America people dream about. It still exists, and that's the thing. But when I got a chance to see people that were working for us that didn't have the same freedoms that I do, and you're young and you're single and you're traveling, and you're like, wow, that puts an impression on you, because you just come home every time and go, wow, America is the best country in the world, and we're the country that everybody does look up to. So the labels that people come up with, I think, are kind of goofy, because the fact that we can sell our products around the world, that America, like in technology, we've got the best stuff, not the worst stuff. Our stuff is the stuff that's, helped. I mean, technology and free markets have helped lift 1 billion people out of poverty around the world. And that was because of what was going on in our country. That was just a gift. I mean, it wasn't foreign aid. It wasn't spreading tax dollars. It was just, us, helping lift people up. And that's what America does. So I think some of those, and then we got acquired by Microsoft, and you asked about Steve and Bill. Well, those guys Steve was the CEO and Bill was the chief software architect. So yeah, I worked with those guys. And Steve and I knew each other from grad school. But right now, on the political spectrum, there are plenty of people at Microsoft that are, supporting for president someone different than who I'm supporting, which is obviously President Trump, because I understand how his policies work. But when you've got that differentiation, I hope that we're still a country where people can disagree and learn how to disagree better with each other. But there are plenty of things where we've got completely opposing views on how we see the world maybe going forward. But that doesn't change the fact that you've got like with Steve, I've known Steve for 40 years.
Right. Yeah. No. And I don't think, I'm certainly not, and I wouldn't expect someone to expect you to disavow your friendship. But just digging a little bit deeper. So I love the story you just told us. But I don't think it absolves the idea, and I say this because I came from a small town in Texas. I'll always be from Sherman, Texas. But I know, and again, this isn't an analysis of you. This is, in general, just sort of talking about how it can go. Some people can appreciate where they came from. Some people want the world to be different than where they came from. And so being from that world isn't one that insulates you from sort of whatever the appeal is of globalism. And so back to the relationship with Gates, there is this mentality out there that we need to, as part of progress, strive beyond the nation-state mindset, that we can help engineer a better world for everyone. And that sort of starts to wrap itself up into, deferring power to the WHO, or starting to organize economies from the level of the World Economic Forum. And whether or not those are good intentions or bad intentions, it does seem to think that the America First mindset that you've laid out, and as someone who is campaigning for Donald Trump, I would assume is something that you would say you support. There does seem to be some antagonism from somebody like Bill Gates to what you're now talking about today, America First.
Well, like I said, certainly there's plenty of people in technology. You don't have to just stick in Seattle. You go to Silicon Valley. There's a lot of people there that have made a lot of money in technology because of free markets and because of the United States. And I don't understand why they support the candidates they support, whether it's for Congress or Senate or for the presidency. So I've had a lot of disagreement for a long time with folks in the industry, same industry that I'm in. But when you're a governor, and you're competing against your neighboring states or states all over, we're competing for talent. We're competing for economic capital that come to our state, don't go to the other state. So as you're a governor, naturally, I mean, it's kind of like, hey, for me, North Dakota first. Man, that's where we want these opportunities, we want these jobs here. And then so it's very easy as a governor who's been in the battle competing for talent and capital, which is what we do. What we do at a state level, to do that for America First, because we shouldn't be letting millions of people pour across our borders and then have Canada, for example, have a policy where they take we bring people to America, they get college degrees even from our allies from those countries, and then their student visa runs out. We're exporting talented people that have gotten graduate degrees in our country. We export them at the same time we're letting anybody in unvetted. And then Canada says, hey, pay us a fee and come to Canada. And then they pick off like 1 million people that could be literally that have gone to school in the U.S. but now are residing in Canada. Well, Canada's just being smart. They're our ally, but they're competing for talent in a smarter way than we are, and that's why you get companies that are U.S. companies that have got operations set up in Canada because they can run a development team out of Canada, thousands of people. So I think America's got to be focused on America first in terms of capital, in terms of talent, and that's why President Trump. I mean, he gets it. He's figured out that this tariff thing isn't about economists sitting in ivory towers at universities and trying to do economic modeling. He understands it from a negotiating one-to-one. How to make sure that there's a level playing field for American companies. And he's not afraid to use our economic power, which we should. I mean, when we got energy security, we've got food security as a country. That's part of national security. And then we got the Biden administration going over and talking to China about climate. When China's the world's largest polluter, they have to import 11 million barrels of oil a day, and they got to import calories. They don't have enough food to feed the 1.5 billion people we have. And then we never use. I mean, you want to walk softly and carry a big stick. The U.S. economy is our big stick. But we've got an administration right now that doesn't know how to do it. President Trump knows how to negotiate with these countries, and as a business guy, I respect that he understands how to use the levers to help, put America first and America workers first.
Tell me about your let's call it migration to support for Donald Trump. I think everybody has had a migration in their support. Not everybody. Some listening, some watching may have understood Donald Trump from the very beginning. But I saw an article this morning on CNN.com about another campaign surrogate, senator from Ohio for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, where they were laying out his past tweets criticizing Donald Trump. And look, I'm going to be real. Like, I had criticism of Donald Trump, and it took me some time to fully understand the virtue of this leadership. But what about yours? I mean, have you always been a supporter of Donald Trump? I mean, you ran against him, so there's some level of a lack of support at one point. But tell me about when you started to appreciate him as a leader.
Well, I think you go back to May of 2016, before he'd secured the nomination. I endorsed President Trump for as a candidate running. I'd never had an opportunity to meet him, but I was as a business guy running for office for the first time. He was a business guy at a completely different scale running for office. So when we both got elected in November of 16, I mean, that was a joyful night for me and for everybody in North Dakota, because I thought I was going to become a governor and have to be dealing with Hillary Clinton. I had 36 days as governor under Obama, and I can tell you that was not pleasant, because we know now from federal court proceedings that the Obama-Biden administration, they had their thumb on the scale helping the protesters at the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, which I inherited my first day in office. I had 36 days under Obama, and it was like a light switch went off when Trump came in. But yeah, I supported him very early in that year. And then I endorsed him, of course, again in 2020, because we'd had, having him as president and being a governor, it was like a wind at your back. I mean, he actually understands that the states created the federal government. They understood that there's things, if you're going to try to shrink the federal government, part of that, you've got to push that responsibility back to the states. In the states, we can push it back. We'd either turn that back to tax breaks for citizens and smaller government, or we can shove it down to the local level, because I'm a guy that believes in, the best decisions are made closest to the people, not by bureaucrats.
What made you decide?
What's that?
What made you decide to run against Donald Trump? What made you decide to run against Donald Trump?
Well, that was for me. It was as much about the issues that were being discussed as it was. It wasn't really about running against anyone, because I think I've got I think it was well noted, during the debates, that I was the one person that wouldn't engage in, inter-candidate criticism and conflict just to get a soundbite the next day or get another minute or two of talking time. I ran for president on three things, which was the economy, which we need to be the world leader. And when you've got a strong economy, I mean, Ronald Reagan showed us that's how you win a Cold War. I knew we were in a Cold War with China. People weren't saying that out loud a year ago, but I understood it. I understood we're in a cyber war every day, because our state gets attacked by North Korea, by China, by Iran, by Russia every day. And of course, we got two really large, Air Force bases in our state, plus Space Force. So we've got, a missile wing and a bomber wing, and the largest UAS unmanned aerial system stuff going on at the Grand Forks and Minot Air Force bases. So I understood from a national security standpoint where we were, and we had candidates that were talking about a lot of things. We weren't talking about national security, we weren't talking about the economy, and we weren't talking about how energy policy underpins all of that. Because when we start trying to kill the U.S. energy industry and allow Iran, their production to grow now up to 3.5 million barrels a day. North Dakota production is down since President Biden's been in office. Iran's production is up like double, triple, quadruple from where they were. Russia's, making so much money right now through these Swiss cheese sanctions. I mean, they're selling most of their oil $15 ahead of the sanction level. So Russia's getting rich, Iran's getting rich, Iran's funding terrorism, they're funding Hamas, they're funding a war against us. Russia's getting rich, they're funding a war against us. We're in two proxy wars now because of Joe Biden's economic and energy policies. And so I was frustrated that no one was talking about that. So that's what I ran on. And of course, that was pre-October 7th. That was before Iran, launching 500 missiles at Israel. And in us and the brink of World War III. So, and I was talking back. You go back on the tapes when I first started running. I said I've never talked to our three kids about World War III before, but I started to well over a year ago that this could happen if we kept going down with these policies. So, I was really in it for that reason. And then, of course, when I dropped out. Shortly thereafter that, I was the first one to endorse President Trump. So, my journey has been supporting President Trump. I think, a business guy in the executive branch office, great. Lawyers, great. Run for Senate, run for Congress. They're the guys that make laws, but we need business leaders in our state houses, and we need them in the White House. And Joe Biden and Harris, between the two of them, I don't think they've created one private sector job in either one of their careers. And so then, how do you understand what the job creators are going through? They want to tax job creators. How do they understand what families and workers are going through? I mean, this is it is the economy, inflation, the borders affecting our economy. With you can't have a mass invasion coming in like it is and not have it affect our economy at a state level. So that's just more background, Will. But thanks for asking.
Well, I appreciate that answer, and it gives me several things I want to follow up on here in the time that we have left together. But you're right. And I was going to ask you, you staked a claim during those presidential debates on your hawkishness towards China. And I was going to ask you, what is it or why when it comes to China? And you began to give us your answer there. As a governor of North Dakota, you've seen the attacks, from places like China, at least when it comes to cyber attacks, and we all know the economic policies as well. But then you brought up Russia. I'm curious, were you in the Trump administration? What would be your advice to Donald Trump on how to handle the war in Ukraine?
Well, let me just give you one more thing on China, which is hasn't been told a lot, but as a young entrepreneur, let's go all the way back to 1989. I'm a kid. We're just starting to first sell our software, Great Plains accounting software, outside of North America. We were in U.S. and Canada. We knew that the easiest places to go next would be part of the British accounting system, if you will. So places like the U.K. and Australia, because we had it working in Canada and a lot of similarities. So on the way back from setting up our first distribution partnerships in Australia, I thought, hey, I'll swing by China because China had been opened up under Nixon. They were starting to look like they might have a commercial economy. There are a lot of people there. So anyway, I swing in there for a couple days as a young entrepreneur, and I get there, and then they say, oh, hey, they're selling the U.S. software down at the street market. And I'm like, really? So I go down there, and at the time, Lotus 123 was the leading spreadsheet, and I sort of expected that they might be knocking off and pirating some of that. So as a half joke, I said, do you have any Great Plains? And the guy goes, yeah, right over here. We weren't selling outside the U.S., and they were selling it for $1 for a 5 1/4-inch floppy for each one of our, general ledger was $1, accounts payable was $1. I could have bought $25,000 of our software for $5 in a Chinese street market. So when people say, oh, when did you start figuring out China? They've stolen every piece of software after 30 years in that industry and across, being involved with a dozen companies, not just Great Plains and Microsoft, and being, chairman of other global software companies. They can't be trusted. You can sell software in Japan, and they'll pay for 99 out of 100 copies, just like in the U.S. There is some piracy, but China, you're lucky if they pay for 1 out of 100. So I've known that for a long time. In terms of Russia, this is a situation again where I feel like that Joe Biden's weakness is what led to this whole thing. The withdrawal from Afghanistan. was 6 months preceded, his invasion. Joe Biden's on the record of making statements that as a president and a diplomat were essentially greenlighting, Putin going in. I mean, somebody asked him, what would you do if he invaded? Well, it would depend on what kind of an invasion it was. I mean, we're going to qualify it,
right,
as opposed to, no, you cross the line. So this is again, failed foreign policy by the Biden administration. Under President Trump, we were at peace. We weren't having wars. I mean, we've started 2 proxy wars, and the Cold War continues with China under Joe Biden. And President Trump has said it himself that on day one he's going to try to find a negotiated solution, stop the killing, and I think he's the one guy on the planet that could do that.
I only have a few more minutes with you, Governor, and I want to try to fit 2 questions in. First, I have to do this. I wouldn't forgive myself if not. I want you to address this other criticism when it comes to you, and that is your push for carbon-neutral policies in North Dakota. You have never forsaken fossil fuels. That's part of your career. You don't have to qualify that. You have been a supporter of fossil fuels, but you have pushed for alternative fuels and set a target for North Dakota at carbon-neutral, I believe. So why is that so important? I understand investing in innovation, but why even set the target? Why is carbon neutrality important?
Well, I think for us, it was putting up a sign that said, hey, look, if you're one of these ESG companies that's, spending trillions of dollars around the world trying to get green, come spend them in North Dakota. And you don't have to spend them on alternative fuels, because with CO2 capture and storage and CO2 enhanced oil recovery, we've got an opportunity to decarbonize the internal combustion machine. I mean, my effort around that is trying to save the American pickup. I mean, save the American car. These EV policies of the Biden administration are literally, of all the things they're doing, these are the things that are the most extremely harmful to our economy. They're the things that help our adversaries the most. The technology doesn't work. We don't have a distribution system on our grid to sustain that. We need our grid to support AI and crypto and a lot of other things we're doing. So it is, and there's a new report out just from Hoover Institute that it's costing over $900 a ton, for some kind of avoided emission theoretical thing, when we know that we can, right now we got 2 plants in North Dakota that are taking 100% of the CO2 off of ethanol. That's not an alternative fuel. That's E15 is in every car. So all of a sudden, hey, Biden administration, we've now got a internal combustion machine that's 15% has less carbon emissions. Well, we've also got a company in North Dakota that's using CO2. They shove it down whole into the oil field. They store 400 pounds of CO2 down more than the barrel of oil produces. They got a net carbon negative barrel of oil right now. Today, they're greener than Patagonia. So if America wants to have zero carbon emissions, you don't need to buy an EV. We just need to be innovative about the liquid fuels. If you're on Team Liquid Fuels, you're on Team USA. And if you're on Team EV,
right,
you're on Team China.
Last question. You've been a successful entrepreneur, Governor. As you mentioned, you mortgaged the family farm that set you off on a path. I know one time the AP wrote about you as a chimney sweep business you started. Great Plains Software, huge success, sold to Microsoft. If anybody young or an aspiring entrepreneur of any age were listening to you right now, what would be the one piece of advice you would give them about their career?
Well, first thing I would do is start off your day with a note of gratitude, because the ability to start and create wealth and create companies and have products that change people's lives. I mean, America is the place for entrepreneurs. I mean, if you want to start a company, this is where you want to start, is in the U.S. I mean, we've got, in spite of all the challenges we have, and we want to continue to be that home for entrepreneurs and do that. But I would also just tell them, go for it. I mean, there's so many people that I meet along the way that are like, they hear about being involved in a startup and creating opportunities for your team members and your customers and your partners and transforming, communities. And they're like, man, I had an idea, but I didn't do it. And so part of it is you got to have the courage to go for it and go for it. And our part of why America is the best for entrepreneurs is because we celebrate people who try and then try again. As opposed to, some countries have got a culture which is risk-taking isn't part of it. And I just, one of the things I've always talked about is, gratitude. I've talked about humility, because when you're an entrepreneur, you make mistakes. You get humbled by your competitors and by the markets and by changes in technology. But if you don't have that element of courage, then, then figure out a way to grow it because that's what's needed if you want to jump into the arena, whether it's in politics or being an entrepreneur. These days, it takes an element of courage to jump in, and I would just encourage all entrepreneurs, hey, just get your plan and go for it.
Try and try again. Have courage. Reminds me, we can end on the theme of basketball, kind of where we started. Antoine Walker, famous Boston Celtic, was once asked about his low shooting percentage. He said, I'm a volume shooter. I'm a volume scorer. They want efficiency in basketball, but life is truly a volume shooting game. Just keep shooting. Have the courage to do it. Really enjoyed this. I could talk to you for another half hour, more about your entrepreneurial career, more about your personal relationship with Donald Trump, but you're always welcome to come back here on the Will Cain Show. And it's been fun getting to know you, Governor Doug Burgum.
Thank you, Will. Great to be with you.
All right. There he goes. The odds-on favorite as the candidate for vice president along with Donald Trump, Governor Doug Burgum. Got a lot of feedback. I see your comments streaming in right here in front of us. I want to go through your comments. We'll talk about some of what Governor Burgum had to say. Plus, a new segment here on the Will Cain Show. Second take, not first take. Second take. Some of the stories we covered this week as I've continued to read and understand that might make us go, would I say it differently? Or am I confirmed in our original opinion on second take? Next on the Will Cain Show. If you look at any poll as we approach this 2024 presidential election, if you look at the list of concerns for Americans, number one is almost invariably inflation. And it's really no wonder why. I mean, in the last 18 months alone, the cost of groceries and basic necessities for a family of four has gone up $11,000 a year, as would be the case when you print money like a drunken sailor. As is in any basic economic understanding, supply and demand. You increase the supply of something, you reduce the value of something. And we've increased the supply of money to the extent that your dollar has lost 24% of its purchasing power. This is all backed upon the fact that we rack up government debt and print money. Government debt to the tune of $1 trillion every 100 days. So what can you do as this decreases the power of your own purchasing power, decreases your own family's ability to survive? Well, you can do what people have done really honestly for centuries, and that's invest in hard metals, invest in the longest store of value, invest in gold. And I've done that. And what better way to do that than the way that I've done that through our friends at Lear Capital. Lear Capital will help you through the process. All you have to do is call them. It's 800-920-8388. Or go to learwill.com, LEARWILL.com. They'll help you convert your 401k or your IRA. They'll help you step into the longest store of value in human history, gold. Oh, please choose Burgum for VP. He would be a great pick. That's SMW on YouTube. Writing into the Will Cain Show here. Streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand. If you hear us streaming on terrestrial radio across the U.S. of A., hit subscribe on Apple or Spotify. You'll never miss a moment of the Will Cain Show. And if you want to watch, for example, our interview with Governor Doug Burgum, just subscribe on YouTube. You can see why young establishment James thought it was an important day to wear a blue blazer to work. We got a couple of comments streaming in on that interview with Doug Burgum, a couple of responses I have to what he had to say, and we'll be doing that in just a few moments. But I want to embark now on the maiden voyage of Second Take. Second Take, not First Take. We revisit some of the stories and the opinions that I had throughout the last week and see if any of additional information, as I've read and listened throughout the week, has changed something we might have talked about. I want to start with Hunter Biden's conviction in Delaware on federal gun charges. Of course, this turned into a partisan affair in some way, with Democrats bemoaning and Republicans celebrating the conviction of Hunter Biden. But libertarian, Reason Magazine writer Matt Welch was on CNN, and I thought he had an interesting thing to say about the way we should be approaching the story of Hunter Biden. Watch.
I think that the way that we should think about this is to try to get ourselves as individual consumers out of the nonstop political consideration. Let's look for the Republicans. There's at least one, Thomas Massie. I saw him do this in Congress today. Say this is ridiculous. We shouldn't be convicting someone and sentencing him to up to 25 years in prison for doing one thing. He lied on an application. There's no victim in this crime. There's no victim in Trump's crime either, right? So if we have a sickness in the criminal justice system in this country. We have so many people in jail. We have so many victimless crimes. You know, Harvey Silverglate, the great civil libertarian writer, has had a book called 3 Felonies a Day. That's the average that us very law-abiding citizens on this panel commit every day because there's so much in the criminal code, right? So that puts everything up to the discretion of prosecutors. And we're sitting around, and if we're Republican, we cheer Hunter Biden getting locked up or convicted. For Democrat, we cheer Donald Trump. I say as Americans, let's work back. Is there a victim? If there's not, let's stop cheering.
On second take, I think Matt Walsh is, in large part, but partially, right about how we should be approaching the conviction of Hunter Biden. I've seen that study before. I've heard of that book where it's 3 felonies a day, that the average law-abiding citizen going about their life unknowingly commit 3 felonies a day. And he's right about the relative seriousness of the crime that he's now convicted, which is lying on a federal gun form. 25 years in prison. And I think Matt says it perfectly there when he talks about with Donald Trump as well. First of all, not a crime when it comes to Donald Trump. Clearly a crime when it comes to Hunter Biden. But a victimless crime in either case. And I don't think we should just turn it into partisan pom-pom cheerleading when it comes to your guy versus our guy in the criminal justice system. But I would say that this is where Matt's analysis falls only partially correct, somewhat incorrect, on first and second take, that there was a sense after Donald Trump's convention in New York that there is no way to trust the justice system anymore to come to the right conclusion. And this was clearly the right conclusion, Hunter Biden's conviction. You know, we'd seen the DOJ attempt a ridiculous plea deal with Hunter Biden. We've seen investigations into him. You can go back and listen to our conversation with Miranda Devine, author of Laptop from Hell. We've seen investigations on much more serious issues like influence peddling stymied by intelligence agencies and Secret Service when it comes to Hunter Biden. So there was a nonpartisan interest in going, is there any accountability for the Biden family at large or for Hunter Biden who's lived his life full of illegality? Is there any accountability left in our justice system? And we can celebrate at least some level of accountability left for justice. We've had a conversation numerous times here on the Will Cain Show about Joe Biden's mental fitness. And little did you know that we've got it upside down. Up is actually down and down is actually up, according to MSNBC. Listen.
Trump is literally crazy on stage, and I say it not in a good way. Not well, not fit, not mentally capable of holding together a sentence when his prompter goes down. And yet Biden is constantly covered for being old, but yet travels onto the world stage doing speeches, dinners, important ceremonies, recognizing people who suffered and survived D-Day, right, spending time with them, connecting with them. You see it all on video. Except if you go to these places or you talk to those Republicans, you see the one time where he couldn't find his chair.
Well, but even that was doctored. A lie. It's disinformation. It's doctored.
This is where we are right now.
It's lies versus the truth. It really is.
So let's see. It's a lie that Joe Biden at age 81 is mentally diminished. It's a lie. It's misinformation. It's disinformation to talk about the president's ups and downs. Lost on stage, lost in a handshake, lost with world leaders, lost in the middle of a sentence. That's actually misinformation. It's disinformation. Up is down and down is up. And the truth is, according to Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, it's Donald Trump who's losing his marbles. Well, on second take, that's insane. That is state propaganda. That is disinformation. That is a lie. That is lunacy. And they look you straight in the eye and try to tell you that down is up and up is down. I spent 80 minutes with Donald Trump a week and a half ago. People have asked me this anecdotally, conversationally. Zero slippage. None. None at all. Over 80 minutes time frame. Biden couldn't do this. You think Biden could do this? Biden couldn't do this. He's exactly right. Biden could not do it. This is insanity. This is lunacy. On second take, we were right. They are lunatics. We talked about Starlink being delivered to an Amazon tribe, and within, I think it was supposedly a week, young men addicted to porn. But here's this story now. Update from the New York Times. One of the men who work for Elon Musk pointed this out. The new headline is, no, a remote Amazon tribe did not get addicted to porn. A Times story about the arrival of high-speed internet in a remote Amazon tribe spiraled into its own cautionary tale on the dark side of the web. The article does go on to say all the good things that the internet has brought this tribe. Now, did some of the dudes, in whatever the tribe is in Amazon, find their way to YouPorn? I'm sure they did. Did they stumble upon some pictures on Reddit? I'm sure they did. And if they didn't, they soon will. And this was pointed out, this was a hit job piece by the New York Times to go after Elon Musk yet again. He's public enemy number 2. Donald Trump, of course, public enemy number 1. Public enemy number 2, Elon Musk. And this is yet another opportunity for them to go after Elon Musk. I have no doubt that is true. I also have no doubt that, given time, the internet will bring a lot of positives and benefits to that Amazon tribe. It will improve health and intellect and knowledge and information access. It will also put porn in those young dudes' hands. On second take, I don't think we were that far off base of the nature of humanity. Next, just yesterday, we talked about immigration playing a role in elections in the EU and possibly soon in America. And the movement in the EU has been described as a move to the far right. Constant characterization of the far right taking power. It's a refrain you hear in America all the time, the far right. I thought this was interesting. It was pointed out first just kind of as a joke. It was a post on X. The definition of far right on the bell curve has moved to basically encompass about 60, 70% of the bell curve, and then right another 20%. And then anything that is safely, virtuously, safely left, only about 10%. You can see these graphs everywhere. Everybody's a Nazi except the far, far left. But here's the truth. And we did this a few years ago, actually, on the Will Cain Show. This is a study by The Economist. And it shows the movement of the political parties, of Americans as well, over time, over a long period of time, in a series of graphs. And they asked respondents for their positions on various issues. And what you can clearly see in these graphs is that the Democratic Party has moved far, far to the left on a whole host of issues. And it strikes you on a level of common sense, whether or not it's gender identity, immigration, the economy. The center has now encompassed what they characterize as the far right. It is quantifiably data-driven that the right has not, and the country has not, and the center has not lurched further right. It is the left that's run off the left hand of the stage. And then finally, yesterday, huge controversy. Joey Chestnut being disinvited to the Nathan's 4th of July hot dog contest because he signed a deal reportedly with Impossible Foods, vegan hot dogs. Not long after we did that story came this, the announcement of a Netflix special. Chestnut versus Kobayashi. Unfinished beef. Kobayashi, the world record holder and dominating professional eater before Joey Chestnut arrived on the scene. Live on Netflix, Monday, I think it was September 27th. Now, this doesn't conflict, of course, with the 4th of July eating hot dog contest, but what timing for the announcement. Where we all played, now we got mano a mano, a head-to-head matchup. Chestnut versus Kobayashi streaming on Netflix. That's all stories we've talked about this week, and that's where we need to think about them now, with a little bit of time has passed, for a second take. All right, coming up, a lot of your comments have come in on our conversation with the odds-on favorite for vice president, Doug Burgum, plus how dare the NBA foul out Luka Doncic in the NBA Finals. Next on The Will Cain Show.
on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
That heat's going to be out there for one more day.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com. Pete Hegseth's eye-opening new book, The War on Warriors.
The army I fought for has gone woke, and it's time to fix that.
The veteran and Fox and Friends weekend host exposes the problems in today's military.
How a far-left ideology has infiltrated the system and is putting our entire country at risk.
With critical insight into the changes that need to happen in the Pentagon and America before it's too late. The War on Warriors by best-selling author Pete Hegseth. Order now at foxnewsbooks.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network. In these ever-changing times, you can rely on Fox News for hourly updates for the very latest news and information on your time. Listen and download now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Catherine on YouTube says, at least we know his energy now. Good interview, Will, referencing our conversation with North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live on foxnews.com on the Fox News YouTube channel, where you can subscribe. In the text link underneath this live stream, there's a button to subscribe to the Will Cain Show. There you'll find interviews with former President Donald Trump, Ryan Holiday of the Daily Stoic, and many, many others, including Stephen A. Smith, Jordan Peterson, and Dave Portnoy. You can also subscribe on Apple or on Spotify. Cincinnati Ray says, he makes sense for VP. We can't afford to take anyone from Congress, and he has the background for work on AI, plus he's a governor. I do think that is something to consider when you consider Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. He's pretty valuable as a senator from Ohio. Would it be the best use of resources to pull him in as a candidate for vice president? I thought that interview with Doug Burgum was really good. I really liked it. I wanted to get to know him a bit as a person. You know, I know what their job is at this moment. Their job is to campaign for Donald Trump. Well, I can talk to Donald Trump. You know, we did 80 minutes with Donald Trump just a week and a half ago. So I really want to know who these people are that are being perhaps vetted to be the second most powerful person in the United States of America. And, you know, we've had these candidates on from time to time on Fox and Friends Weekend, and sometimes it's hard to break them out of their, regardless of whatever question you ask, their pre-planned talking points. And I think we got that accomplished with Doug Burgum. Who is he? What kind of man is he? What's he into? How does he think? What is he up to? But I know as well, two-a-days, young establishment James and Tinfoil Pat, that, you know, monitoring our audience, it's a bit divided when it comes to Doug Burgum.
Yeah, it really was. I was following the live chat, and there's a lot of positivity towards him, but there's a lot of people who are skeptical. And I was wondering from you, do you think that skepticism from Republicans and conservatives is because he was up on that stage against Trump and just that optic of him, he was running against him? Do you think that might hurt him with some conservative base?
I do not. Okay. Because I think that most people who, and I actually really think this speaks to something about Trump, people that have been rivals, once they are vanquished, become part of the fold. And it's almost from critics to political rivals. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about Donald Trump and you know, that you could have no greater enemy. But it's kind of interesting. Once that someone is vanquished, then he's wide open to them becoming his friend. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, Burgum was far from an enemy. He's right on that debate stage. He said this to us. He was one of the few that didn't really go after Donald Trump, as opposed to, say, DeSantis or Haley. But here's the thing. Trump would even welcome back into the fold DeSantis and Haley. Yeah. And he has.
With Haley.
Basically, he has. No, I think the skepticism from Doug Burgum is what I tried to press him on a couple of occasions. I think that there's an idea among the Republican base that he is establishment. It doesn't help him out that young establishment James wore a blazer to work today.
He's still smiling over here, by the way.
Super excited. Yeah, super excited about Doug Burgum. No, I think there's a sense. I don't even know. I do have a sense why. I mean, I don't know if it's his success in business or not as an entrepreneur, his relationship with Microsoft and Bill Gates, and his push for carbon neutrality in North Dakota. I think those are the three, legs of the stool that this idea about him rests upon. And I pushed him on those things to some extent, and I liked his answer. First of all, when it came to Gates, he's like, I worked with the guy. We disagree, And I think that's the life that a lot of people out there in America live that life. We have friends, we have family, and we have coworkers that we disagree with. And, that's the ethos of the Will Cain Show. Invite that in. I've got Tinfoil Pat and Young Establishment James on the same show, and I want it that way. All we need is far left Ricky, who doesn't yet exist, to join our show, and we can have the right dynamic.
I can pretend to be.
So I think you basically might be two-a-days. You might be our hidden. We don't think it's escaped the rest of us, hipster.
Just has to repeat
you're
the
wolf in sheep's clothing.
It's got to repeat the Westchester talking points. Whatever he hears from
I don't know many garage
friends.
band Republicans.
Hey.
I don't know many garage band Republicans two-a-days. So you're not flying under the radar. You just haven't come out yet. And it's Pride Month. Now's the time to come out.
Wow.
Two-a-days.
Savage.
Flip it.
So I think that it doesn't bother me. I liked his answer about Gates. On carbon neutrality, here's my thought on that. I think Burgum, and this is actually similar to Trump, is at his very nature less ideological and more pragmatic. A business dude. He's a business dude. And, my second business, much lower levels than what these guys have done, was, and we've talked about it, and I can talk about it more at any time, but I started a business for quinceañeras, and part of what I noticed was, okay, look, the Latino population is growing in America. It's a growing market, and I want to start a business in a growing market, right? And it didn't have anything ideologically one way or another, not pro, not con, not immigration. It's just like, hey, market, business, right? And I think Burgum's approach, this is my guess when it came to carbon neutrality, because he didn't punish fossil fuel. You can't in North Dakota. So I don't think he was ideological about it. I think it was like, oh, they're shoving all this money into green. Like he said, ESG funds. And well, who's going to win on that front? We're going to win. Go ahead, bring them in. We'll have an everything above the line mentality, and I want that business to be in North Dakota, along with oil and gas. My gut is that's where he came from on that as a business entrepreneur pragmatic perspective, not we all need to start eating bugs and get rid of, and the sea levels are gonna engulf the entire East Coast tomorrow if we don't start putting windmills up. I don't think that's who he is. I think he's a business dude.
Sounds familiar.
No, it makes sense, and a lot of
I'm gonna start calling you far left Ricky, by the way.
Please do not. I do not. I already have a nickname. Thank you very much. A lot of people are calling for. There's a lot of call for Rubio and Tulsi in the chat today too. Those are two other people.
Now, I personally would have more establishmentarian concerns about Rubio than I would Burgum.
Very much.
By the way, in general, when it comes to leadership, I preferred governors over senators. Just as a short back of the envelope hand. By the way, another critic, of Donald Trump who's been welcomed back into the fold, Marco Rubio. Tulsi's interesting. I mean, Tulsi's an independent thinker. I still don't know where Tulsi is on a host of issues. Tulsi's a little bit like RFK. We forget sometimes. RFK's on the left. Just because we agree with him on a lot of issues and appreciate his authenticity, he's authentically on the left. And I don't know about Tulsi anymore and past positions she's held and versus where she is today. She'd be a great person to try to sort of explore, right? Because I don't know that it's a fit to be a Republican candidate if you hold a lot of those positions you held from the past.
Someone pointing out, too, that their moniker could be TNT, Trump and Tulsi. Would be a cool name.
There's a good one for Donald and Doug.
Boys, there is no TNT or Donald and Doug. The brand is simple.
No, there's
Trump.
He can't
okay.
say it on the
Does
show.
anybody look back? Trump Pence, was that a big bumper sticker? Come on.
Yeah, that's true.
It's Trump.
That's true.
Is the brand. Alan Daywood says on social media, I believe YouTube, or maybe this is Instagram. I like him, and all the picks are 10 times better than any of the Democrats. Pick the best person for the job, not try to check a box. You guys have asked me behind the scenes, should we try to get Tim Scott? Should we try to get J.D. Vance? The answer is yes. If we can have a similar interview to what we just had with Doug Burgum and get to know them as people, potentially the second most powerful person in America, potentially in line to run for as a front runner for president, or potentially, in the case of something bad happening, a sitting president, yeah, I want to get to know all of them. You guys stay with me here. All right. A lot of love, a lot of hate for the take that I put out last night when it came to Game 3 of the NBA Finals.
We can have a discussion.
I said, and I believe this morning, it is absurd that the NBA would allow its referees to foul out Luka Doncic, the biggest star remaining in the playoffs, maybe now in the conversation, at least his best player in the NBA, with 4 minutes left to go in the game. Now, when I tweeted that, and Young Establishment, you can come in because you're our sorry Boston Celtics fan. People are like, are you telling me that was a charge, not a block, the sixth and final foul? I'm not fighting on one foul. I'm fighting on a game. Star treatment. 6 fouls over the course of a game. Luka Doncic has fouled out 3 times in his career, and never in the playoffs. And in the NBA Finals, that's when your whistle is this way? You foul out that guy with 4 minutes left? That's how you officiate this? That, I think, is absurd for the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. I kept my texting outside of the group chat last night.
I was waiting for it.
And I said to a buddy, I wish they didn't foul him out because Will's just going to talk about him getting fouled out now and not the game itself. Mm-hmm. But do you think there's a dynamic with Luka where, I mean, he's with him and Kyrie putting the team on his back and he's down 2-0, that you think maybe he put that jet to another level last night that maybe caused some of those fouls? Whereas if it's a regular season game, right, he's not going to be pushing it that much in a kind of a desperation way.
So here's what I think is going on. Let's point out 3 things. One, I think that's bad officiating. I think, and I bet you I'm not alone, I'm going to bet you the NBA has a conversation with their referees. You can't have that. Second, I understand why people don't like Luka, who aren't fans of the Mavericks, and I am concerned that Luka has to make some fundamental changes. Brian Windhorst had a rant on ESPN that's going viral this morning, and it's something. And I'm a homer. I readily admit it. But Windhorst didn't wrong. Like, Luka, first of all, to your question, James, he's the target. The Celtics are going after Luka on defense. And it's a problem. And by the way, they're going after Kyrie. So they're going after both of the best players. And they're both getting blown by over and over and over again. And secondarily, Luka doesn't have control over his emotions. I think that's very clear. And I've said in the past, I think it feeds him. I think it fuels his fire, but a fire can burn out of control. And he's complaining to the refs, and he's whining, and he's yelling at his bench to challenge that call, and he's doing everything in the world but getting back on defense. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned. If he's going to be, and he definitely can be, the best player on a championship team, I don't think it can be this version of Luka. It's got to be some more mature, different version in the future of Luka Doncic. So that's number 2. Number 3, here's the God's honest truth. The Celtics are better than the Mavericks. The Celtics are really good.
Wow.
Well, I'm down 3-0. I mean, if I came in today and said the Mavericks are a better team.
So you're saying there's a chance.
That job is locked down on a different sports television show for me to come in and go, the Mavericks got them just where they want them. By the way, that job, I'm going to remain cryptic about it, has decided that Luka is the new LeBron, hates Luka Doncic. Meaning make a career on talking bad about one dude. So the Celtics are so good, James. I'm going to give it to you. It's really interesting, and it's a scary kind of good. It's not the kind of good that I could bank on if I were you for the next 5 years.
Really?
Because I think this type of good might be inherently more fragile. Most of the time in the NBA, it's built upon what the Mavericks are built upon. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, maybe 3 dudes dominating another team in the NBA. So in that way, the Mavericks are the formula from the past. And the Celtics I don't know how many dudes at this point that can win you a game. I'm so frustrated, man. Like, when your dude, I don't even know his name, big, tall, fat guy comes in and knocks down a three from the corner.
Hauser. We got
no,
him
Hauser's knocking down threes.
Off the streets of Boston.
No, Hauser hit a bunch of threes, and then Pritchard hits threes. I'm talking about the dude that never plays. Last night you pulled some, like, third-string center in who hit a three.
He had some March Madness
I guess.
experience.
Oh, sweet. March Madness. But at that point, what am I supposed to do anymore? You guys launch and hit threes.
But this is Brad
And the
Stevens.
truth is, the Mavericks look awful, like, offensively. I mean, it is Luka or Kyrie driving into double teams and either hitting it or not. And it's really a testament to their star power and how great they are that they're hitting them at a decent rate. Mm-hmm. Because every time they're doubled, and they don't double them until they're in the paint, until it's on the drive. And nobody else can hit a shot. Nobody else can hit a three. So it's totally clogged down. The whole thing is shot. It's clogged down. And the Mavericks they've done this all throughout the playoffs, by the way. P.J. Washington, Derek Jones Jr., these guys have been really good. Mm-hmm. But they're absent. They're totally absent. And the two stars can't do it. So, I imagine Jaylen Brown will get MVP.
Yep. His odds went.
But by a small margin over Drew Holiday, over Derek White, over, of course, Jason Tatum. I mean, you guys are 8 deep. 8 legitimate three-point shooting, deserve minutes deep. And that's just not who the Mavericks are. And certainly not at this level of Luka maturity. Luka has to become LeBron. By the way, maybe LeBron becomes a Maverick next year.
Heard that.
Mark that down. Mark that down.
Are they pulling at Cowboys right now, the Mavs? I mean, jeez.
To lose at this stage? Hold on. No, two-a-days. It can't always be that losing the final thing you play in means you're a total loser.
Skip made
the
that
Mavericks vanquished the Clippers, the Thunder, and the Wolves in 6 games, handily. Now, we didn't expect it, and they kind of came from the 5 seed and all that. They just ran into a better team.
So you're just saying the West is way worse than the East?
It's not. The West is better.
Well,
that's the truth. But not better than the Celtics. By the way, the Celtics have been my pick all season long to win it all. They've been my pick. I can't pretend I picked the Mavericks. And by the way, back to the fragility, James. This is going to require these guys to remain in chemistry, cool with sharing the ball, playing basketball this way, and that's why I wonder if it'll be able to keep going for 5 years.
Yeah.
When it's special, it's special. Well, and I think it's special right now. But I don't know how long you can keep it special.
Tatum and Brown are the 1 and 2, the guys that you have signed to long-term deals, and those are the guys you have to build around. And I think because those two guys, and they might get this is not a top 3 player, but they're up in the top 10, top 20. And the fact they're okay
I think
with doing
Tatum,
that,
they're really good. But let me just tell you something. If you don't have Drew Holiday, if you don't have Derek White, you're not beating the Mavericks.
Those are crazy trades, though.
If it's
they got them for nothing.
If it's Kyrie and Luka versus Tatum and Brown, I like my chances.
Yeah,
but you're just
fair fight.
Better as a team. What's up, Tinfoil?
So, no one has ever come back from 3-0 in the NBA playoffs. Are you kind of mailing it in now? Do you think there's still a chance? Or do you have any hope?
Well, it's embarrassing to go down 3-0. It's really embarrassing to get swept. Even though I'm like struggling with that because I'm so proud they're in the NBA Finals. And what we've talked about it, by the way, Dallas, I got the Rangers winning it all. I got the Mavericks essentially coming in second. I got the Stars coming in 3rd or 4th. I got the Longhorns coming in 3rd or 4th. And by the way, we didn't even mention it. I got Scottie Scheffler, who may be the most dominant golfer since Tiger. He's on a historic run, by the way. So big for Texas and Dallas in particular. But it is embarrassing to get swept, and it's possible. You guys know I took Saturday off of Fox and Friends because I'm going to Game 4 in Dallas. And am I going to the sweep? Am I going to get swept?
Bring some tissues.
tissues. You want to go?
I'll
If that's
take
your team?
chair. Can I take your chair?
Yeah.
No. By the way, your team is about to get swept, but you get to go to the World Series or the Finals or whatever it is. Do you still...
Yeah.
Going. Yeah.
And loving it, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Maybe not paying.
Like looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I guess, Patrick, to your point, what I'm rooting for is a gentleman's sweep. I don't even think they get it to 6. And I definitely don't think they come back in 7.
Let Boston clinch it.
So you fight for a measure of respectability, make it a gentleman's sweep, and then I wear an I Love Tyra shirt Sunday on Fox and Friends to fulfill our bet.
How about a Kevin Garnett jersey?
I think the wager has been made. I don't know who's making the shirt. Actually, I got to get it to me quick. I Love Tyra. It's got to be waiting for me in New York come Saturday. Look for that Sunday on Fox and Friends. All right. Love this show today. Great show. We got to run out of here. Make sure you download, subscribe, hit like, leave a comment on our interview with Governor Doug Burgum. I will see you again next time.